All right, it's lab report day. It's March 9th. Here we go. We've got a few things to talk about. First is lab maintenance issues. So Neil 1 just kind of had some serious problems last night. We're trying to upgrade it from ARC 10.3 to ARC 6. One sec, yeah, that's Neil 1, yeah. Um, we ran into this error when we were trying to do the upgrade. Sort of an institutional memory. This is probably the kind of stuff that's good to share. It's a detail, like maybe you guys never run into this, but the error was uh, Esri Pi folder is not a valid short name, which is like a PC load letter kind of an error. Anybody know what that is? PC load letter?
I've seen it.
Classic. It's in Office Space. They make a reference to it. You guys have seen that. Have you seen Office Space?
It's the printer.
Right. So it's like this prototypically cryptic error message that you don't even know what it refers to. So anyway, Esri Pi folder is not a valid short name. So we tried to do some instructions to do an uninstall of 10.3 that requires. So it wouldn't even uninstall, right? You go to uninstall 10.3 and it's like runs into this error and quits the uninstall. So you can neither upgrade nor uninstall the old version. So you're just kind of screwed. So we tried to do sort of like a manual uninstall where you just like delete and move folders around, delete registry keys, and ARC is so badly designed that there are literally hundreds of registry keys that you have to delete one at a time. I was doing that and ended up deleting something on accident that I shouldn't have, which is great. The whole computer shut down or locked up. It wouldn't boot up again. I was able to do a recovery, and then that worked. And then the next thing we found was I dove in a little deeper to figure out what this message was all about instead of just forcing an uninstall. And ended up discovering that it was a ridiculously easy thing. It was for some stupid reason looking for external drives for no reason. So all you had to do is disable the DVD drive and all of the SD card reader drives, and then it worked. So ARC is a horribly written piece of software. And anyway, Earl ran into some problems with that with blue screens of death. We're going to keep an eye on it. But I would, if you're using Neil 1 for the short term, make sure your stuff is backed up to a cloud drive somewhere so that we're safe. I did get the wireless working again, so it was good there. The MSI laptop had been locking up, so Sammy had been running some Pix4D data on it, and it would lock up. I did a reinstall. Earl helped with that a little bit. We're back with a fresh copy of Windows and a fresh install of Pix4D, and it had been synchronizing. I don't know how far we got. Looks like it synchronized back up again. I've actually got a folder with the old data, which I'll delete, but we're good to go on that one, I think, and hopefully it won't lock up. The printer computer is online, so Matt, before you leave today, let's get you an account on that. I got an account for Earl yesterday, so he's ready to go. So at least that's more people that can use the printer computer. This is kind of a side job that I had to do this week. So I worked on a tornado modeling Python application with Steven Strader, a former PhD student in the department. Steven graduated a year and a half ago. He's now teaching at Villanova. He's interested in, so the model itself was developed to sort of simulate and assess future potential costs of tornadoes based on changes to how tornadoes happen, but also changes on population distribution. So one of the grad students in the department, Sarah Hall, is interested in sort of using that model again for something else, a new problem. So it's great to see a piece of academic work that was done before being sort of used going forward. So that's what we want. That's the sign of a good research program, right? It's continuity. One of the things about the model was it needed to be upgraded to Python 3 from Python 2. When Stephen went to use it, there was a bad interaction between GDAL. So GDAL is a open source raster processing engine. So there's a Python. So that works on. There's a version of that essentially is under the hood of ArcGIS. I think we talked about this in 459. It's in QGIS. You can download it as a standalone. So the Python, this model uses that to load the data. It also uses a program called Shapely, which is a Python-specific piece to handle the vector data. So when you're simulating tornadoes, you're drawing lines and polygons to intersect. Those two versions weren't playing together, so kind of an unfortunate piece here, but it was pretty easy to get going. It was just sort of a matter of using an older version of GDAL with the most current version of Shapely, and those played together nicely enough. But one of the drawbacks of the open source world is that as different people are developing different packages, they can sort of get out of sync with one another, and that's what happened here. This, by the way, is a zonal statistics problem. So for those of you in 459, when we get to zonal statistics, the way this works is you're generating a tornado box that simulates the width of the tornado swath and the length of it. And you overlay that on top of a raster surface that represents the number of housing units in each grid cell. And so you basically add up all of the housing units within that box. And you do that for every tornado over a simulated 10,000 year period to get an assessment of overall risk levels. So kind of an interesting problem, but keep an eye out for that when we're talking about zonal stats later on. The MakerBeam drone is coming along okay. I did have a chance to kind of work on the base plates for it. The way that it's working now is there's a pretty strong BP underplate that's going to be the battery plate and provide most of the structural integrity. And then the top plate is going to be flat, provide a little bit more reinforcement, but also is the thing that the flight controller and the GPS and everything else is going to mount to. So what it had then is sort of both were structural and both were sort of had an angle piece that would go down. But I needed to create a mount for the GPS, and that had to go up, and I couldn't go in both directions. So that's why the redesign. It's been longer. It's been taking longer than I want, especially since we're just sort of recreating what we had before. So it's a bit frustrating how long it's taking me to get this stuff online. I'm interested in maybe, I had the idea of sort of moving the GPS unit on top of the flight controller instead of in the front to save. If we're worried about downdraft of the propellers and making sure that it's got open access to the air, I'm a little worried that the GPS is sort of causing turbulence or not providing enough airflow. Maybe it's not a big deal, but maybe it is a big deal. Yeah.
Is there any benefit to having it closer to the center of the ground doing the whole thing too?
It might be. So yeah, if it's trying to estimate its position and its offset, yeah, it could be. Probably, since this isn't a really high precision GPS, it should be fine. It won't know the difference. But
the gimbals, yeah, it's slightly heavier on the front versus.
Oh yeah, we'll have to balance that out for sure. But we'll balance it out probably with the battery positioning. Yeah, and I've got a camera. One of the things that I'm excited about is I've got a camera that's 30 grams now. So that'll be a significant weight savings because a GoPro is 250 or something. So that would add a lot of flight time. That's basically a battery's worth of weight. So if we can cut out a GoPro and add, I'm probably not going to add a third battery, but that'd be exciting. It should really boost our flight times if that works out. One of the problems that I've been running into with these, a lot of the prints that we do with like terrain models and stuff, this doesn't make any difference at all. But when we're making these fine pieces where the holes are quite small, there's a bit of an overprint on the base layer that comes through. So I finally tracked down the correct name for that. That's called an elephant foot. So that's made tracking down advice about it easier now that I know the lingo. Elephant foot. I guess it's this way and then it flares out just a little bit. So it looks something like this. You can sort of see at the bottom of the cube here, there's just a little bit coming out. But that ends up making the holes too small, which means you got to go in with an X-Acto knife and carve them out. And it's not a big deal, but it's annoying. And if you could figure out a better way to do that, that would be
I ran into that a lot when I was making that Connect sensor.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just pesky, right?
It's
like
really pesky. The measurements will be exactly right, but when it's just the base layer, messes everything up.
Yeah. So I've got two things that I'm trying to do to fix that. One is to increase the spacing on the first layer, so there's an offset that you can dial in on the printer. It's like in the configuration menu, and it's like Z offset, so you can dial that up and down. If you increase the spacing, then it essentially starts farther away on its first part, so that should eliminate the squashing effect. but it also causes less adhesion, which is sometimes a good thing. But on these really small parts, it's kind of a bad thing because there's not enough to make it stick. So the other thing too is you can control the extrusion rate on the first layer. So I've done a couple of tests, so I don't feel like I've got a really good handle on what exactly. I did play around with the Z offset quite a lot, and it was really handy because the adhesion was a problem on my new printer, my new print bed. So things were just like squashed on there, and it was hard to get them off. And now that with a little bit more space, they're more normal, like they pop off like they have been on other pieces. So I got a chance to play around with this a little bit yesterday, so this is super exciting. So for the Maps for the Blind project, one of the things we're trying to do is get a visual-based system. So using a camera to detect position. The idea is that we'll use something like, at least initially, like a laser beam to mark what you're interested in. So you'd have like a little pen laser, and you'd hit the button, and it would shine this bright red or green light, and then the camera would know that that's very different than the rest of the picture, and so it would say, we saw a light happen here at this point. It'll pull these points out and then co-register everything. I hadn't done any camera-based interaction with Python before, so I didn't know how easy or hard that was going to be. Turns out it's super easy.
Really?
So yeah, that was great. So and I should have put a note in here. The install so the package that we want is OpenCV. That seems to be a much larger project for which there are Python bindings, which is really always a good sign because that means there's going to be a ton of stuff in there that we can use. I've already found that there's even just bringing up an image in OpenCV is great because you can pull RGB values, and the pixel and the mouse over coordinate of what you're looking at like shows up in the GUI dialog box. So for a lot of remote sensing stuff where you're interested in sort of hovering over and getting like, where am I, what's this point, what's that point, like it's just done for you. So it's pretty sweet. I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff here. So just as a couple of things that are in here, image processing, feature detection, tons of stuff is in here that I think is going to be really helpful for this project. We don't need to do anything incredibly advanced. The way that I'm imagining this working is we'll set it up on the lab table, so we've got a black background of the camera overhead. We'll pick out the coordinates of the white models, and then essentially it should be able to auto-register. So if the thing shifts around, we should still be able to track it. And then it'll be basically, so the georeferencing operation I was just showing you is essentially what it's going to do. It's going to pull the pixel coordinates off of the image, translate that to real coordinates, which is pretty easy to do if we know where the real coordinates are on our model. So it should work pretty neatly.
So say if you have a building outline, so what you're saying is if you shine a laser like on a specific building, it'll see that if it falls within that certain range of coordinates,
yeah,
then it'll like trigger like this that building.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot of details to be worked out, but I'm pretty confident we'll be able to get something online pretty soon. So spring break goals. I still have not finished that paper on. So yeah, basically my new goals are like a repeat of the last goals. So I was here 2 weeks ago. It was a bad time. I think everybody's still pretty frazzled, so we're looking forward to the break. Hopefully get more sanity back. But yeah, I still need to finish off that GIS manuscript, just the figures. I still need to get the drone flyable. I'm probably going to put off the algorithmically processed tactile-friendly NIU map in favor of the last point over on the left, which is develop prototype. Oh no, the third point, record video for making models of photogrammetric data. I'm pretty happy putting off sort of the details of making it like simple in favor of getting some of these annotation things working, because I think the simple part, like I can do a lot of that stuff on my own, but I want to make sure that Matt has things to do. So I can develop the prototype here, then that kind of unlocks the stuff that you can do over the next couple of weeks. So that's kind of the effort. I should have put this on here, but I'm also hoping to revisit Cartographer over spring break and get how that's working. Okay, that's it. Any questions on my stuff? Cool. All right. I think we'll just leave the camera run. See how that goes. I think it's still running. Still right.
Alright, so this week has been kind of a tumultuous week for me. Spring break's approaching, as you know, and so that means every midterm that besides 459, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been thrown at me. It's been thrown at me this week, but there has been a lot of stuff to do this week, I guess. So it's been pretty hectic in that regard. But most of this week I have been working on trying to finalize, I guess, the QR code stuff. Trying to create a website that is linked when you scan the code and that speaks to you, and also has like a simple background and a text-based description of what's going on. So I actually made a little bit of a rough draft. We'll get to that in a second here. So looking at last week's goals, I wanted to create a embedded text-to-speech, implement the text-to-speech engine in a website to read off information. So I did that, but trying to pull information from like OpenStreetMap has been kind of a little bit of a challenge. That's something we talked about a few days ago. I'm still trying to work on. Created a rough draft of a web page. Talk about that in a second. And then eventually here, I don't know, we'll see creating a second 3D map to actually implement the QR codes right there. And then also completed lab safety training that was sent to me. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I saw something in the email about that.
Yeah, so
Was it okay?
yeah, it was like all like eyewash station stuff. So. But that's done.
We need another name for this other than a lab.
Yeah.
That means we're responsible for all kinds of secret
Exactly,
reports
yeah.
that don't apply to us.
It was fine. It was a bunch of videos, but it was clearly for like chemistry. So the website. So this is like a little screenshot of what was going on. I actually just used Blogspot, the Google thing, as a basis, and then just did some basic HTML stuff in the background. I'm not an expert at HTML, but it's pretty easy to pick up to at least add images and text. So what I did, my phone is charging. I'll talk about that in a second, but so it's just got a picture of the building. This is for Davis Hall, for example. Picture of the building, the text, and then embedded OpenStreetMap, Slippy map. So that's like the visual side of it. So if this is in like on a display somewhere, then this is for the people who aren't visually impaired. They can make use of it as well. But the cool thing is that when you scan this code, and it's dependent on if my phone is actually charging or not, when you open the web page, it speaks everything that's in the text here to you. So it's pretty sweet. It's like instantaneous. I don't know. Do you have a QR code reader on your phone? Because I do. It was acting up for me with iOS. On Android, it was working fine, and on desktop too. So, and it's pretty. You just type in. At least for this case, this is that speech synthesis API that I was talking about.
So this is just the QR code, and it's just going to pull up the web page?
Yes.
Okay.
And then it should pull up the website and then start playing the stuff. Just hit the browse website. Sweet.
You have selected Davis Hall. Davis Hall is the home to the Department of Geographic and Atmospheric Sciences, as well as the Department Geology. Nearby
awesome.
buildings
Yeah, it's
are
pretty
BNIU
sweet.
Library to the northwest, Sweat Parsons
So the
Hall
neat
to the
thing
north,
too is that
Hall to the northeast, Faraday
there's a
Hall
lot
to
of
the
variables that can be edited in it, such as voice type, volume, pitch, and rate of speaking actually. So those are all things I didn't really mess with in here, just in the sake of time and sanity. But the spring break, I'm hoping to look deeper at that because I think it's super cool.
That is super
It's
cool.
super easy to implement.
Yeah.
Especially with
So how did you do the implementation side? Is that the JavaScript that you were telling me about?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
And what is that exactly?
So it's the actual whole project is called Speech Synthesis.
Okay.
It's like hosted like by Mozilla.
Okay.
It's part of a bigger project that's also like text or speech recognition. But obviously we're not dealing with that here exactly.
Yeah.
But this is the part that just speaks back to you, and it's just like the basis of it is just like a handful of lines of code.
Right.
And then the only thing that you have to do to get it working is type in the text that you want to say, and then you just add more lines of stuff. for any variables you want to change them. So in that regard, it's super simple to make use of, I guess.
Okay. Fantastic.
I really like it because I was messing around with some other stuff. There's the one that you showed me that was there's a Chrome extension where if you have a website, it'll sometimes play, I found, depending on the website. We were running into the issue of when we were looking at the campus map,
Right.
and it wasn't playing. And I found that issue as well on just a bunch of other random websites.
One thing we can do is maybe make contact with Galen Kapperman and figure out what he uses, and see if we can use that.
Yeah.
Because that would make testing it down the road. But this is fantastic that it doesn't require any kind of a plug-in.
That's what I like too. And also is that once you scan it, that's it. The other one you have to click to play.
Right.
Or do something like that. And I think the more variables that you can get rid of in this process, there's less room for error. Things go wrong. The more simple that you can make it, really.
The only problem is that this is going to require someone to code it.
Yeah.
Whereas the other way, potentially, you could link to something that already exists, which might make updating and maintenance issues easier.
Yeah.
But this is a fantastic, especially as a prototype for some of this stuff. How long would it take you? Okay, so what if we demo this on a smaller area where there isn't quite a, so I gave you the stadium model that we did.
Yeah.
That only has a few buildings.
Yeah.
So that seemed like a good thing to use as kind of the test case. What would you want, so in terms of a larger campus model, what would it take? What do you think it would take to sort of get this running with the QR code, and really ready to roll?
Well, I think the biggest limitation is the proximity of code. So I would like if we could make, space it out more. So if we could have that scale of the map that we use for, print multiple tiles, I guess is what I'm saying, because I feel like
It needs to be bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
There needs to be more space between the actual codes, otherwise it's not going to scan them. So I think it's the biggest thing. If that's possible,
Yeah, bigger.
divide it into more tiles maybe, and then piece them together.
Yep, we can do that.
So I think that's a really big thing. And then over spring break, I don't know if you want to print one off. I don't know if they can come in here over spring break.
I could print some off.
And then I can start working on it.
Okay.
See how it works.
Earl, when you investigated a while ago, carving up a model, so if I make just a large single model, did we come up with a good way to cut pieces out of it?
Not in Cura.
Okay.
It just would not work.
Okay.
What you do is if there are multiple pieces in your project, we'll let you divide this up, but it would not carve up. You can't do it there. So we have to actually do it in editor.
Okay.
Model. So
What if, Mike, you flew the area around the dorms, right?
yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to that. We can start small. This is still sort of a proof of concept, but I was over at the Home Student Center looking at their kind of campus map, like the one that you see right when you walk in the door. I think we should develop, I think our target for the end of the semester is developing a print version that matches that almost precisely and is big, right? Table size.
I agree.
So figuring out a way, our best shot in terms of whether it's going to be QR codes or whatever we think is ultimately the best, and demoing that at URAD, I think, is going to be the way to go.
Definitely.
And you know that there's a poster requirement for URAD.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I think it says, I think we said the posters and do first week of April.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
It is.
So we'll talk about that more.
Okay.
Put that on your to-do list for the future. Okay.
Just real quick,
Yeah.
I get a little behind on this. Since you're designing these things for the visually impaired, how do they find the QR code? 'Cause to me, that's a highly visual thing to see, the little outline of that.
Right.
How do they find it and scan it?
Well, that was the same kind of question I raised when we talked about the pen print.
I was thinking,
that's
I was thinking about that with it too. So, okay, so you just didn't print
But when
QR
it comes
codes
out to-
on top?
Yeah, so what it comes out to be in terms of identifying where these are is largely based on the 3D printed buildings. So they know the building is there, and so then they're entrusting in us that we've placed some sort of identifier on top.
Okay.
So if they can, associate like a building, they might have a rough guess of what's going on.
They get here,
Yeah.
and then they know they need to put a thing over the top of it to figure out what it is, whether it's a
Yeah.
camera or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that answers your.
Do you think there's anything that, so in terms of, and this gets back to maybe old stuff or rehashing old ground, but the tactileness of the scanning device I think is important too, right? So the phone camera is highly operational, works great, but the microscope version, we'll have that laying around.
Yeah.
There's that and then the boroscopes.
So this is sort of what I imagine. If it were smaller, it would be better. But if this acted like the pen friend, and you go like that, and
Right.
like that, I think that's
Yeah.
I think. But we had problems with focal length, and
Yeah, we had talked about which route to go with right away on the camera over that route. So we went with the camera. But yeah, that's definitely something.
are we still thinking camera with clip-on lens, or what is your best
I
input
would like to
device?
do it without lens, just because it makes it easier for everyone to use.
So just phone camera?
Yeah.
Just here.
And then that's also dependent on overall print size. But I think if you're talking,
Hey, I've got a camera that I pulled off of it's like a laptop size.
Okay.
So it's a camera that looks like that, and I swear the pins coming off of it are like just straight USB pins.
Really?
So we might be able to rig something up that
that'd be pretty cool.
doesn't have the weird focal length of that,
Yeah.
but it's essentially just a plug-in. It wouldn't. I don't know if it would work on a phone, but it might.
Right.
It would work on a laptop.
I mean, if you had it as a display piece.
Played around with the boroscope yet?
I have.
Yeah. Is it having the same issues?
It wasn't much of an issue of focal length, but it was really touchy with like movement, I guess. It got blurry releasing, so you had to be like perfectly rigidly still with it for some reason.
Weird.
Otherwise, like just getting all like wishy-washy.
Okay.
I don't know if it's just that or whatever. But
I mean, what about like just something like along these lines, right? Like, what happens if you just
right.
like, is this small enough that we could literally just use a webcam?
Yeah,
to do it?
like, working with that. Yeah, but I do agree, like having something in your hand that kind of instead of holding a phone here and hoping you're aiming at the right
Yeah.
way.
I was thinking about
Yeah.
that too.
But yeah, that's stuff that I think to look at this next week.
Okay.
Definitely. Any other questions about this or?
No, that's really cool.
And yeah, I've talked about this. This is another different method of doing text-to-speech. That was the Chrome extension. So goals for next week. Since it's spring break, I will be here.
You're here?
I'm here because of the internship. I'll be working full time.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be here and I'll have a lot more time to work on this since I won't have assignments to do and stuff. So I'm really excited to take a mental break and then also like kind of reestablish myself on this and really focus and hammer down on some of the stuff that we've been talking about today. Create a final version of the website to link to, like design-wise. Depending on the route that we're going, create links for all camp or at least the chunk of campus that we're talking about, testing with campus buildings. Implement it on a map, and then depending on where you get, maybe start with the touch-based system in some way. Looking into it, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Cool. Very nice.
Let's jump over because I may have to. So we can spin our clock and,
Oh, okay.
it's like, ba-ba-ba.
Brad, do you have lunch plans? I don't. Danny, do you have lunch plans?
I don't know what time is that.
And anything other than pork products?
Anything other than pork products is cool with me. veggies, things like that. Allergic to pork.
Is it okay if it's half? Yeah, half and half?
No, that's fine. As long as I keep it on the half. Which is something that I can eat. That does not touch it, because it makes,
Okay.
Okay, my report, last week I was hoping to work on my proposal. I was looking for the new power supply for my server, trying to catch up with grading, and I was looking to start collecting files for my geomorphon calculations. So, proposal. I actually got something functional for an abstract, which I will say is a huge first weight off my shoulders, because I was sort of floundering in terror. But I think we found something that's actually a workable project now. So I can actually start really nailing it down. I did my first general summary, I guess, sort of like an executive summary or something. Basically a 1 to 2 page summary of it, which I think sort of locked down more of the concept. So over the break, I will be spending most of my time trying to flesh that out into the fuller proposal. Yay! So for the proposal, I think we're going towards the realm of the NetCDF interface. Basically, what we want to try and do is build a package that will take LiDAR data, process it into a range of visualizations like hillshade models, sky view factor, openness, just different ways of representing that, and then allow the investigator to actually like sort of manipulate settings on it, so like they can do overlays, composites between the two of them, change certain parameters on them to try and allow features or different items to actually sort of pop. That's what I'd like it to do, so they can actually work their way through it. And because the big thing is, like I tell you, most people in archaeology do not actually understand the backgrounds behind the different types of visualizations. So actually by manipulating through the different manipulations, they'll see like this type of visualization is really good for showing these types of features better. But if I add this in there, you can actually make more things come out. So that's basically where we're going with it, which means I will be becoming a Python wizard, hopefully, because I will have to try and code up most of this stuff. We're going to use I'm going to try to use as many things available, but
So I was thinking as I was reading over your mini proposal last night, another avenue would be to try to get as much of the stuff into ARC as possible. So if the workflow were ARC centric, which can still be Python, right? So a lot of the way it works under the hood would be Python, but the way the interface would be presented would be in ARC. I think that would open up the work to a much larger audience.
Okay.
So if you want to try to get the archaeologists using it, I think developing a Python or an ArcGIS overlay would be the key.
would it be better in ARC or QGIS then?
Well, if it's QGIS, I think you're a little more on your own. If it's ARC, I can probably help you a little more with that.
Oh, that sounds like a great thing.
From my experience in the archaeological field, everybody runs ARC.
Okay.
So that would be another perk to it. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. Most archaeologists don't understand coding. So if you have a fairly plug-and-play interface with it, they'll want to use it.
Okay.
We're adept at learning the toolbox. None of us, we got into archaeology because we don't want to code things. So.
All right, that's hopefully, if it works well, they'll understand some more of the backgrounds behind the types of visualizations. So they'll know which ones to use in the future. If they have a certain type of feature they're looking for, they can know, well, this type of visualization seems to bring out this more. So they'll be more apt to use the different things, which is what I want to do, increase the usage of them.
What's the terrain? So there was a terrain-based toolbox. Was that in ARC or was that something else to create?
That was not in ARC. That was it was just a standalone toolbox that someone had created.
Okay.
It was the forget their names. I forgot their stuff, but
Okay.
the guys from Poland, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was the guys from Poland that did that. Okay, so let's jump through that. So that's what our proposal is. I'm actually thinking that maybe I might make it through grad school after all. Maybe. Maybe, we'll see. Server, up and running. We've been running this thing pretty much non-stop all week, and hasn't blown up yet, knock on wood. We've been running every piece of data I can find. We've been trying to run Pix4D models, doing some time checks. For some reason, it seems to take like 15 minutes to do everything, no matter the size of it. It just seems like it runs 15 minutes for these sections, smaller ones and larger ones. So we're thinking that might be something to do with the way the server software is set up. So we're thinking about maybe putting in a secondary drive and then running just the regular Windows on it to see if that changes the allocation parameters. New power supply, I just got it in. Pulled out the box, but these guys, of course, they did not send a Edison cable with it, so I need to grab a power cable to go with it. I can plug it in.
That's the power supply?
Yes.
So it's small.
It's a plug and play, it just slides right on in. Back.
Crazy.
So it is plug and play. So it is a duplicate of the one I have in there now, which even though they say it's really not rated, well, it's underpowered for that. It has been running. So this will give us hot-swappable capabilities for the server. So if one goes down, it will not shut off the server. It is hot swappable, it just slides right on into the back. And we are good, so that I'll be working on sometime later today. For those that don't know, I did set it up so that it can use for everybody to store data on. I have it set up. I put in the new 2 4TB drives last week, and I did set them up so they are mirrored to each other. So we have a backup for data. So any data, feel free to start loading it on there. And it's set up as two mirrored 2 TB drives. So they're actually separated. But there is a small sub-partition. I call it the working drive. So there's just something you want to throw on there and not really worry about it. Just to play. If you want to throw something on to process something, you can throw it in the working. The other ones are just called data drives. So feel free, start loading stuff on there. They are backed up, so that can work.
Can you just show that on the side somewhere?
Yep, I can show you all that stuff later. Yeah. Okay. Mavic. So been trying to fly as many routes as possible. Mike and I have both been using the Pix4D flight control for it. It works wonderfully. I was truly amazed at how well they've set it up. It has the options to choose your flight routes. You can do linear scans. You can do what do they call it?
There's some function I was going to talk
Yeah.
about a little bit about.
Okay, cool. That's it. I'll let you talk about those. I did somehow lose one of my little cases of micro SD cards in it. I have no idea what I did with it. I had left the drone here one night, and I was going to take them home to pull some stuff off and process, and the life of me cannot find it. So if you ever find a little bit of little clear plastic cases with a bunch of little SD cards in it, let me know. I brought some more in for myself, and I've been running a bunch of flights in the evening at dusk to see how the low light capabilities are of the camera. That data I have not processed yet. We actually flew one over Founders Memorial last night, which I'm really. I don't know.
You guys know the rules about flying at night?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've been flying. Can't do it.
Don't fly at night.
Can't do it. So I'm gonna fly at dusk right around that. So I just want to see what the camera can do.
Yeah,
on it.
look up the FAA rules on that, because it's, I forget what it is, but it's like, I think it's, you can't fly, I don't know, it's like 20 minutes within sundown or
It's
something like that.
something like
I don't
that,
remember
yeah.
which direction. Like if you can, after sundown, you can fly for 20 more minutes, or you have
Without
to quit
waivers.
20 minutes before sundown. So
So
my advice is clarify the rules on that. You don't want to get in trouble.
What's like, what does that like apply to, like, is it like if you're over specific like, set buildings, or like if you're
No,
everywhere,
it's general flight rules.
like no matter the else?
Yep.
Yeah, no matter the altitude.
Without you can apply for waivers on that, but you do have to actually file a waiver to do that. There is a whole subsection of rules about that. The other thing is, I did have my first close call-ish with a flying vehicle near my house. It is just right outside that air zone where I live. There's an airport about 5.5 miles away from us, and I was flying about 200 feet, and I heard plane coming. I was actually flying a preset route, and the pilots around our area like to do a lot of low flying and a lot of fun things. So I saw the plane coming and realized it was coming in very low. I don't know if it was even at the 400-foot floor. So I had to abort my mission and just dive as fast as I could. I think it would have been clear, but it was just one of those, I'm not going to take a chance.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell too. I mean, because the size of the objects are so different, it's hard to estimate speed. You have no idea whether those paths are gonna intersect.
Fly history.
Yeah.
And I know, because my daughter flies out of that airport a lot, that she's like, yeah, a lot of times they'll be flying and they're just barely at 400 feet. Or it was someone in an old classic fighter, so they like to do a lot of low, tight turns
Like
and
a World War II fighter.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
There's a couple guys up there that have them, and so they do come right at rooftops. It seems like a lot of times. So I was like one of those, and the abort feature does work really well. It stops, and you can take immediate control and just woo. And the Mavic does descend very rapidly when it wants to. So that is a very good feature. I know we were having troubles with yours. It was just sort of like.
Yeah, and I dialed that up, but then it was there's a setting where it's supposed to slow down, so it can come down fast, but it's supposed to like do the last 10 feet or something, and I can't find where that setting is, where it's 10 feet or 20 feet or whatever.
Yeah, so that was one of the things just for everybody to keep in mind. So still, so yeah, that was first encounter with something that to be worried about. Okay, Mavic. The other big bugaboo right now is grading. I'm a little bit behind on your 459 notebook, so I'm so glad that it is break so I can catch up with that. So yeah, grading. Then 3D printing. I wanted to this week try and start working out some sort of methodology of getting 3D printed QR codes. But
I think you shouldn't do that. You got enough on your plate.
well, it's one of those things I can work on set to prints. I'm gonna see what happens. Okay, because Matt and I have been talking about that all. Okay, so then we'll scratch that. I still think it's something for the future, maybe. For the future, then.
Now there's spare
time. Yeah. Spring break. What? There's a spring break coming up. I plan to use that to try and add a couple thousand words to my proposal. I think I'm looking at a good place, but for me, writing is going to be really hard. But I actually feel I have a focus that I can count on now. And the book that I scanned in last week was just a wonderful, wonderful plethora of information, and it really helped me lock in on some things. Wish we would have found that one like 6 months ago, but then I would have had all the fun of terror and horror. I plan to work on this over, get the rest of that going on. Dr. Beal says we might have an extra hard drive somewhere around the lab that we can try and do a just Windows-based version of it. And I plan to fly the drone, fly the drone, fly the drone, fly the drone, and fly the drone. If we can get out today, I will we were talking about going over to the towers and maybe home center thing. I'd like to try the spiral flights and see if we can get one to just do the spiral flights around the Homes Tower, because I think that would be really, really cool. And fly some more. It's just fun. I like this one a lot. So, looking back, my goals for last week were proposal, abstract made, yay! Little score, new flowers fly for the server. It's here, needs to be installed. Keeping up with grading. Yeah, I'm getting there. I am caught up on the other class, so that's all caught up. Just catching up with you guys a little bit behind. And I did start collecting some files for Geomorphons. Still not quite sure where I'm going with that one, but that's something I've got to work on over the break too, because I think our summary or our outline for our project for that class is due over break. So that's where I'm at, everybody. And I hate to ditch out, but I've got to go submit our colloquium proposals for next semester so we can get those approved and have people come to talk to us.
I'll talk about some. Excellent. So I guess it's a good segue for you to go through.
So I'm down stick your head and look at these. I forgot where she's at.
What am I doing? Woohoo! Nope, that's not the right button. That's a good button. All right. So haven't seen you guys in over a week, but always fun. I'm gonna switch to this side actually. I think. Nope, I'm gonna block. I don't know. Gonna just spin around. Okay. So my last week's goals were to work on my LCPs. That didn't happen too much, unfortunately, but I'll get into that. Did get a lot of drone flying time in, some photogrammetry work, and 2 posters. Cover all of it. Was not terribly productive on the Peruvian LCPs, unfortunately, but I am going through, I've started the process of relocating the sites and putting accurate GPS points on them, or just a point shapefile. So that I'm hoping will be beneficial moving forward, instead of having just one big polygon area to start from. We're going to have more specific locations. So that's the next thing on the agenda. The big thing that I was able to do over the last couple of weeks was fly the drone and play with it. And for this, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to load everything there, but I'm going to flip to my laptop. This was starting out in, this is the Northwest campus. Student Rec Center is right here. Grant Towers are right here. I don't remember the name of this building. I guess these are New Holland, top.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the ortho photo that I made. Start out with the point cloud here. Pix4D is awesome. It gives you the nice this whole scene here. It gives you the location and angle of all the photos that it's just to import it. It gives you the point cloud, and model came through very nicely. Yeah, it took a long time to run on this. It took like 10 hours or so. If I can use this thing, it might be a lot faster. The things I'm really proud of are the local photo, like I said, and the DSM generator.
Was this just from yesterday?
No, this is from last week. I haven't run the stuff from yesterday yet. This is really cool because it's 2 centimeter spatial resolution, which I'm really excited about. Just showing off the DSM.
Oh, nice. That's a lot of detail.
I was just saying the spatial resolution is 2 centimeters on it. So, and that was even down here, like that's what Jeep was there basically.
Okay.
And that was outside my main study area. I was mainly looking at this spot to theater. So even at 2 centimeters on the outside, the whole tree was pretty happy with that. So that was that. I want to keep flying, and I did. This is the only one I did the full processing on.
Are those uploaded to the server anywhere?
No, I was going to talk to you about that today. I have them on a hard drive. I'll get them on that server. Whatever you want. I have 400 photos that were just raw to put together. I can put the DSM on there. Whatever you want.
Okay. Yeah. Usually I'll take we'll put it all up there. I'll show you where to copy it after the meeting.
Perfect. But yeah, so again, don't have a lot of stuff in the PowerPoint about it, but I was using the Pix4D capture app a lot, and I was using it as well. It's just an absolutely wonderful platform. You have the choice between double grid, single grid. You can map it to a polygon instead of just a box. So it'll just fly the whole thing. It gives you estimated flight time, general area. The one thing I haven't been happy about is it doesn't give you like a progress tracker per se. It'll show you as it's going exactly where it's taking the photos and where the drone is in relation to the space. But it doesn't say like, oh, your flight time is 10 minutes. Estimated time remaining 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little guess and check. You have to keep an eye on the battery. He was talking about the circular modeling. I collected some photos of that to give it a try, but I haven't processed them yet. And that's super easy as well. You just basically pick a point, and it'll fly the drone exactly around it. I think mine is a very, very small area. Mine is a very small area, and it took about 5 minutes. It took over 100 photos just circling around the point, which I was really excited about. The other thing I haven't tried in the app is you can just do a free flight, and it'll take photos all along the way. You can make a model of a free flight. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that. I have been in contact with, I'm active in the drone forum online for Natives, and there are a couple other people that are using it for research and modeling, so we've been comparing results and discussing Open Drone Map versus there's Drone Capture, which is another open source app for it.
Okay.
For the phone to fly it. So
okay. Mission control.
I think it's just drone control. Let's check my phone.
No, but no, that's what it's for. Is planning the mission.
Yes. Oh, mission control. Yes. So I'm trying out the different things because we all know the Pix4D license is incredibly expensive, and I don't want to keep throwing away email addresses. So that's basically where the drone is. Looking forward, I want to keep flying the northwest area because I only got about 40 odd acres of it. I want to keep flying more of what you want up there.
Okay.
Just to add in, I want to try out the other modeling programs, and I've had 2 crashes with it in the last week, so I'm really going to stop doing that.
It'd be interesting to. I mean, I don't think we have anything that's a higher resolution than that, so it would be interesting to maybe make a 3D model of just that building, print it out, sort of see it.
That one right there? Or?
Yeah.
Well, and I was just saying, if you're talking, I don't know how much you heard with the circular model, but you can set it around the point and it'll just fly the circle.
Right.
I did a small one that took 5 minutes and over 100 photos.
Okay.
So Earl was wanting to do that on Home Center. We were seeing how that would compare to just like this, which was the double grid.
Okay.
So
double grid is both directions?
Yeah, north and, for lack of a better term, north and south, east and west.
Yeah.
Relative.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's a nice advantage over, so I use Tower to do most of my mission planning, but I don't think it has a double grid. And I should check and see if there's an upgrade because those are really handy in terms of getting a good spatial coverage. So all the stuff that I have is just a single swap, always east-west or always north-south. So you can change the direction.
Right.
But if you want to put 2 in there, you've got to define it twice and change the thing. It's kind of irritating, given that it's a flight pattern that is probably pretty common. So that's good.
Well, Pix4D is super easy on it. You just basically say double grid, chart the area that you want to go, and press go. And keep an eye on it. Like, it's really plug and play. Next thing, Indian conference. Our poster is almost complete. I was surprised Emily's not here. We're going to give her some shout outs for this because she put together most of it. Talking a lot about this is some drone modeling that Peter Leach did down in Peru. I don't have a bigger copy of it, but we've also done some modeling of the individual burials down there, just with cameras back and forth. So I'll bring in the poster when it's done. You guys can see it. We're finishing that up. Conference is next weekend, so hopefully finishing up this weekend. Finally, my SAA poster at Society for American Archaeology, which is in April. I've finally emailed a couple other researchers to try and pull some more data because I'm at a loss, can't find anything else. I've started making the shapefile for the sites that I have, which then we started talking about rasterizing yesterday, and and actually just started watching your videos the night before on that too. So I want to put those into point to raster and then start some of the Gaussian, that stuff. Words are failing.
Perfect.
And one of the things that dawned on me last night as I was talking about this, since there's a possibility that I'll be adding more information, I'd like to figure out a way to make it very plug and play and not have to redo the whole process whenever something new comes in. So that might be something I have to touch base with you on. Other than that, what am I going to be doing over break? In a word, everything. This is not a break for me. I want to get very ahead on everything. I'm going to do a lot of work. Remote sensing, I was lucky enough to get, Dr. Lowe got me a copy of the Erdos Imagine software to put on my laptop. So I'll be running a lot of processing on that, which will then help me with some of the GIS stuff. I want to get the Peru LCPs at least off the ground, get them close, if not run. Finish up my Midwest Andean Conference poster, my Society for American Archaeology poster. In drone, I want to keep flying that with different areas, different models, and keep bringing in that information you want. Okay. Any questions?
I would encourage everyone to also try to have some fun over spring break. And
What is this? Spell that out.
and not regard this as an opportunity to work 80 hours a week. So.
Well, some of the stuff is fun. So.
Quick question. So, Pix4D, what is it? Just image like stitching software, or like?
That's a good question. So it takes the images that you capture from the drone. It finds key points between pairs of images. So it knows generally that an image is sequential. So it'll take this one and that one and that one. It'll look for those key points and it'll tie those together, and then it'll essentially create a 3D model. It'll create a point cloud. So it's going to find what is a common point and reference that in real space. So latitude, longitude, and elevation for each individual point, and then our color value. And then from that, it's going to do a couple of additional processing steps. So it can create a three-dimensional mesh, so a solid surface. It can create a raster DSM, which is just sort of the height of everything. It can create a DTM, where it tries to strip everything off and just give you the ground. All of those, so everything after the point cloud is an additional layer of processing. So I find Pix4D to be mediocre. It's good at the point cloud. It's really good at the point cloud. But the other stuff, I'm not as convinced is as good. So in fact, a lot of the stuff you're doing is trying to work with DSMs and DTMs that are derived from Pix4D. And you've already seen some cases where it doesn't work, and hopefully it'll tell us a little bit more about how it's going.
Yeah, my presentation is actually extremely short.
Okay.
Should
we wait on the pizza until after?
I have to be at a colloquium at 12.
Let's wait on the pizza for after. Let's go for it.
Okay.
Okay.
So last night I was working on running water samples on the ion chromatograph upstairs, and I was doing that for 12 hours, and I didn't stop until 4 a.m.
Oh wow.
So I
Well,
literally.
good morning then.
Yeah.
If I'd have known that, I would have brought you coffee.
Yeah. Well, I finished it all, which I feel really good about. I literally just put this presentation together like 5 minutes beforehand, so it's really very short.
That's right.
My goals mainly this week, I was working on the ion chromatograph, which is measuring different dissolved ions in my water samples to try to get an idea of how much sewage contamination is in my water samples, basically. And then I'm also working on geotagging and processing the 8 surveys that I did. And last week, I was able to geotag the surveys within about 2 seconds of accuracy. So it should be, the geotag should be like within 10 meters of accuracy horizontally. And I processed those on the server here, which took about 45 minutes. And
How many images?
300.
That's fast.
That's awesome.
Uh,
My northwest corner area had a little over 400, which is about 10 hours. That's wonderful.
I think I'd be in for a couple of hours on my
Yeah, it works great. The DSM looks way better than the DSM I ran with images with no geotagging and with the full like 1,500 images. The last DSM I ran had 1,500 images with no geotagging, and there was some pretty wacky stuff going on with random points above and below the ground surface, and the whole thing was kind of warped. But this looks way better. I can see the road a lot more clearly. I can see this outlet stream, which is important. I wanted to make sure that was imaged pretty well.
The elevation pattern looks a little bit weird. Is it still warped?
It's not warped in the same way as the other one was. The other one, the top right corner was high, and then the bottom left was low, and so like everything was sideways. Here, it's high at the top and at the bottom here, and this is where there's a lot of water, so it kind of makes sense that this is low.
Oh, is the red the low?
Yeah, the red is the low.
Okay.
It's definitely not perfect. Like there's this area right here, which it should be flat, but it's got this weird, like kind of pixelated pattern. And there's a few areas that also have strange pixelated pattern where it should be completely flat. But it's a lot better than last time. And here's the points that came out of Pix4D. So it right out of Pix4D, it gave me 28 million points. I'll probably reduce that to make it easier to work with. And I also noticed it did a better job at the top and the bottom of not having crazy points going out like all over the place. So the geotagging definitely helped a lot with the processing. This is the side view, and with the other point cloud, there were points like 100 meters above and below the ground surface. So this is a lot cleaner looking.
Great.
So I finished analyzing all my samples last night, and at spring break I'll be working on doing more geotagging of my surveys and processing more surveys.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Looks good. Thanks, Sammy.
Yep.
All right. Stop the camera. Thanks, everybody.